Okay, it looks like the camera is finally rolling. I just got home from work and I'm really tired. I had to stay an hour late tonight, and that meant I'm just now getting home. It's like 6:45. But I found this package here waiting for me when I got here. Got here a day early, and it's Masterverse New Eternia He-Man. Now, I'm not sure exactly what New Eternia is yet, since it's a new thing, but it seems to be like its own continuity. It's not the Filmation or the mini comics or Revelation, which, up to this point, all of Masterverse has been Revelation. But of course, the intent of Masterverse was always to be an all-encompassing line that would feature several different iterations of Masters of the Universe. They've even got like the new Netflix show being made in some figures for some reason. But New Eternia seems to be something that's more aimed at people like me who are fans of the series and have been since the very beginning. And this is a really cool looking figure. I've really been looking forward to it. I was lucky to snag one off of Amazon for retail price. And like usual, when I get something off of Amazon, I had all these gift cards saved up, so I basically got it for free. So, yeah, I'm really excited about it. There's a lot to go over with this figure, so let's not waste any more time and let's get started. First of all, let's have a look at this nice piece of artwork here on the side. Got a nice portrait of He-Man up at the top, very, very handsome, square-jawed, heroic-looking figure. And then down here, a picture of He-Man charging at us with his shield and battle axe. And this seems to be based off of the positioning of it. Seems to be based off of Mark Taylor's drawing of Vicor, as the character is called now, which some people consider to be the first drawing of He-Man, but Mark Taylor himself said it wasn't, and that it was a drawing of another barbarian character who shall remain nameless. I'm sure for legal reasons Mattel really wants to pretend that it had nothing to do with that other barbarian character, but yeah, this is not really supposed to be He-Man, according to Mark Taylor himself. So, and then a really awesome picture of He-Man here on the back, and it's cool to me to see He-Man with the horned battle helmet, which the original figure was supposed to have, but they wound up removing it in like right at the last minute because supposedly the kids wanted to be able to more easily tell who were the good guys and who were the bad guys, and I guess they figured like a long mane of flowing blonde locks would be more obviously heroic than a horned helmet. But this figure has both, so you've got like a more sort of traditional long-haired blonde He-Man, and this other one with the helmet, which unfortunately on my example, it looks like the helmet's sitting a little high on the head, but we'll have a closer look at that later. So yeah, it says, Masters of the Universe New Eternia, original designs inspired by classic concepts. And then he's got a bio on the back, of course, and we'll go ahead and read that real quick. He-Man, most powerful man in the universe. The most powerful man in the universe explores the world of Eternia, seeking to stop the sinister Skeletor from forging the Scimitar of Chaos. So that's probably that scimitar-like sword that the Skeletor figure comes with. He can feel the twilight of the world coming. He can feel it in his bones. He must find the megalomaniacal madman and put an end to his havoc once and for all. The fate of the universe demands it. Wow, that's nice and dramatic. I like the idea of this kind of like this He-Man on the edge of the apocalypse. That's kind of cool. But yeah, it seems like it's supposed to be its own sort of continuity, not based on any of the previous media. You can see my box is a little banged up, but I don't really care because, like I said, I'm gonna open it. But yeah, this wasn't one that I got from Amazon warehouse or anything like that. This is just like the regular retail price. But I probably should have got it for a little bit cheaper, shouldn't I have? He's got the same kind of gray stone background in the box, like we're used to, despite the figure having a shield in both images of artwork. The He-Man figure does not come with a shield, so that's pretty surprising. But I suppose I could just steal the shield off of another figure. Maybe I could even take the one off of Revelation He-Man. So here's the Power Sword, and we can see that it is not just a reuse of the Revelation Power Sword, which was easy to do. This one is, I think, a little more like the Alcala Power Sword, but it's still not 100% that one either. It almost looks kind of like somewhere in between the Alcala Power Sword and the Filmation Power Sword. It's a little more angular than the Classics version, but it's much like with the Filmation version. It's a longer sword, I think, than the original toy was, where it seemed like it was a fairly short sword. This one's almost more like a broadsword. Handle seems a little longer too. And then another accessory, which this is the smallest accessory, so I'm going to be careful as I pull this out. This is the knife that should go in his boot. And that's nice. That's the first He-Man I've ever had that had a boot knife. The first Origins He-Man, the one that was a Comic-Con exclusive, that one came with a boot knife, but I don't have that one because I'm poor. And then here is the standard He-Man with the blonde hair. And I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about this one, because I wasn't really impressed with the pictures, but I do think it looks a little bit better in real life. Maybe not quite as chiseled and heroically handsome as that image that we saw on the package. He looks a little more like Rod Stewart, I think. But it's still not a bad head. I like it fairly well. I might wind up repainting his eyebrows black. I'm used to He-Man having black eyebrows. I mean, this is probably more realistic, probably fits more with the blonde hair for him to have these kind of light brown eyebrows, but like I said, I'm just used to He-Man having black eyebrows, so I might wind up changing that. So here's the axe, which he's not holding it, it's in the package as if he's holding it, but again, he's not actually holding it. And this is a return to more like the 1982 style of axe. You can see it's a little rougher, has some nicks cut out of it, but it has you can see how it has the kind of design pattern sculpted into it like that axe had. It looks very much like the old axe that came with the original figure, although I think it's actually a little bit smaller, which is strange because he's a bigger figure. You would think he would have a bigger axe, like the one that came with Savage He-Man that was massive. But no, this one's just kind of like not that massive, but it's cool. I like it. I'm not complaining about it. I like it. So here we have the two hands that come with them. So here's an open hand, which I'm not really going to use very much because he doesn't have a shield. Facts is facts. And then here's a gripping hand, because he's got like a solid fist on the actual figure. And that's probably going to wind up getting replaced also. Maybe I'll give him the shield that King Grayskull came with, since, I can't really get the... I probably could, but it just seems like it would take a lot of extra effort to get that on the gripping hand of King Grayskull. And I'm insisting on King Grayskull being a lefty. I don't care if you consider that to be the original character or not. King Grayskull should be left-handed. So even if I make a 2000X style King Grayskull, the Revelation one is still going to be left-handed. They're both left-handed. I don't care. It makes sense in my continuity. So we got all the accessories out. We'll get He-Man himself out of here. He is held in with some plastic tabs. You know I don't like the plastic tabs. Alright. So he's a pretty impressive looking figure, if I do say so myself. Let's have a good look at him. And there he is. You can see what I'm talking about, where like the helmet's sitting pretty high up on the head. I don't think it's supposed to sit that high up on the head. So what I'm hoping is that if I apply some heat to it, hit it with a blow dryer, I can soften up the helmet enough to pull it off of the head and then kind of reposition it. I've had to do that with the hair on some He-Man figures before, particularly the Savage He-Man head that came with Super 7's Ultimate He-Man figure. That one, like, the hair was like really high up on the head, and it looked like when my sister Valerie decided she didn't want to have bangs anymore, so she tried to cut them off, and she wound up looking like Courtney Cox in Scream 3. I realized I just compared it to like three different things, but I'm not even talking about that figure, so I don't even know why I brought that up, because that's not the one we're talking about now. He's got some gold shoulder armor, which is kind of an unusual thing for He-Man, but I can think of at least one version of He-Man that had it before, and I think my fellow longtime fans know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Dolph Lundgren in the 1987 movie. He had shoulder armor very similar to this. So if one wanted to make a custom of the movie version of He-Man, I think that this shoulder armor would be something that would be really cool to put on there. So let's go ahead and put the knife in his boot. So I'm gonna get that on there. I remember seeing the knife in the boot in some of the early mini comics artwork and thinking it was so cool, and wishing that He-Man had that knife in his boot like in the mini comics, and that does look pretty sweet. The ankles seem pretty tight. There we go. I'll get those loosened up a little bit. I like these boots better than the Revelation ones, because the Revelation ones had those kind of hard soles on them, and this is more kind of how I imagine He-Man's boots as being, where it's like those sort of barbarian boots where you just kind of took a piece of animal skin and tied them around his feet with these straps. So the loincloth is unusual for He-Man, because unlike the furry loincloth we're used to He-Man is having, this one's almost more sort of like just a leathery, like a doeskin loincloth, almost closer to what you imagine Tarzan is having than He-Man. And the belt, man, that belt looks really cool. Look at all the detail in that. It's like the regular He-Man belt with like the big stud in the middle, and then the smaller studs around it. But there's like this sort of texture sculpted into it that I think is really nice, and it's really cool. And then he's got the smaller wristband on this side and the bigger wristband on this other side, and it is like a massive wristband. It's like bigger than even the one on the Revelation figure. You can see like how it like covers up even like the back of his hand and goes all the way up his elbow. And so they weren't playing around with this wristband. And then we got the breastplate with kind of a more stylized iron cross than what we're used to. It's kind of typical of Mattel these days, where they're trying to get away from the Iron Cross as being He-Man's emblem, like in 2000X, and with King Grayskull, which I happen to have here also. You can see he's got the asterisks, like the 2000X version had. So that was a little different from the Iron Cross. And this one, it's still recognizably the Iron Cross, but they still kind of tweaked it a little bit, so it's not exactly an iron cross, but it gets the point across. I know some people out there are gonna nitpick and say, well, it's not really an iron cross, but you know what I'm talking about. It's like, I don't want to argue semantics. We're not gonna argue semantics. I just, when I say iron cross, you know what I'm saying. So, he does have a bespoke strap in the back here for the power sword to fit into, and it is a nice, tight, snug fit. Look at that. So that's nice. We haven't had one of those, I don't think, in any of the Masterverse figures so far. It's just been like, almost like the old school figures where you're just kind of supposed to fit it in the strap in the back of the armor that, is just there. and it's just a happy accident that you can put the sword there. But no, this one actually has a bespoke uh, slot for it, and we see the armor has the straps in the back, and this is interesting. I think this is really cool. Is it looks like there's actually two buckles that this strap fits through. This is one down here at the bottom, and I think that's just to hold the loose end of the strap. So that's nice to have. And then it actually unbuckles up here. And if one wanted to remove the shoulder armor, one could do that. So I'm not going to take both of them off, but I did want to take at least one off so we could see it, how it looks without the shoulder armor. And that ought to give us the idea. It's a nice tight strap, so that's going to hold it on there really well. So you can kind of get the idea of how he might look if you took both of those off. And it still leaves you with some pretty cool He-Man armor, but like a more sort of old school look. You know, this is obviously supposed to be like a more sort of rough, badass looking He-Man. There's some cool detail in the shoulder armor too. The Iron Cross is actually on there too. See it right there. And some more sort of details in the front. I don't think it's supposed to be anything really specific, but it looks cool. And then a little more sculpted into the side. See, almost there's like an H at the bottom. It does look very similar, like I said, to the armor that Dolph Lundgren had on his shoulders when he played He-Man in the 1987 movie. So for a guy like me, who's actually a really big fan of that movie and loved that version of He-Man, it's cool to see kind of a throwback to that, like an homage to that version of He-Man, who I feel like is kind of unfairly maligned, and I really like him. But this obviously isn't like a total movie He-Man figure. This is very much of more of a, like I said, an homage to the original prototype version of He-Man, and fits very well in with it fits in with the mini comic feel that I like, and that barbarian aesthetic that I love, and what I think He-Man ought to be. So that's really cool. I really like that. I'm gonna swap out his hand right now. I'm gonna put the open hand on here, and I think you can probably get this wristband off. I'm gonna try to get it off real quick, but yeah, it comes off. It's a really tight fit. So if you want to swap the wristbands around, if you wanted to give him like two of these wristbands, like you could buy an extra figure and swap out the wristbands. It might be cool not only to do that, but to take this big wristband off of one and have a He-Man figure with two of these giant wristbands. That would be really cool. I've also seen where customizers have added a cape to this version of He-Man. Speaking of the movie version, they gave him a red fabric cape, and that looked really cool. So I might wind up making a cape for this version of He-Man, because I think that would look really sweet. Let's go ahead and swap the heads out, because I want to put the more traditional He-Man head on here. See how that looks. And he looks pretty cool. There we go. Although, like I said, I do think he looks a little bit like Rod Stewart. If his hair were spikier, he'd just look like Rod Stewart. So now that I've got the two gripping hands on the figure, I can have him dual wield, with both the axe and the power sword. Unfortunately, despite the artwork on the packaging, like I said, he doesn't come with a shield, but I'm sure I can scrounge up a shield somehow. I wonder how well he would hold an Origins shield, because I know I have extra Origins shields. He looks badass. This is kind of like in a lot of ways the He-Man figure that I always wanted to have, where like he's just more of a badass kind of He-Man, less of I love the old school like Filmation cartoon and everything. I like the lawful good kind of interpretation of He-Man, but I also kind of like the idea of a guy who's like a slightly maybe less horrible version of Conan. I don't mean horrible. He's a great character. I love Conan, but you know what I mean. How like Conan is not exactly like the nicest guy. Maybe He-Man's a little bit nicer than He-Man, but or He-Man's a little bit nicer than Conan, but that don't mean that He-Man will not f you up. I'm not gonna drop that f bomb in case my mom is watching because I know she watches these videos sometimes. This is not a show for kids. Uh, but I'll in honor of her, I'm gonna avoid the f bomb just that once. But you know what I'm saying is that like uh, this would be He-Man you would not want to mess with. I just noticed his sword is a little warped, so that'll have to be something I'll have to do with the hair dryer to soften up a bit. By the way, King Grayskull, the sword that I have on him, that's the one that came with the Savage He-Man, and I was able to get the warp out of that just fine. You can see that the stupid plastic tab is still in his cape, though, so I'm going to have to take that out. Ugh, I must have missed that one. Anyway, this is a great figure of He-Man. Like, this is, I think, probably going to wind up becoming a lot of people's definitive version of the character, is how great this is. I don't know if it's quite going to supplant the original version of He-Man for me. I mean, for me, there's just like a certain magic about the head sculpt of that 1982 figure that just it can't be beat. And as much as I love the even the Origins figure, that's like about as close to that as you can get. Like that head sculpt's just magical for me. It's one of the best head sculpts of any action figure ever. And in fact, the only guy I can think of that like might have a better action figure head sculpt is the guy that's right next to him, the original G.I. Joe. Those to me are like the two best action figure head sculpts I can think of. But for me, my favorite He-Man figure, at least so far, is the classics version with the vintage style head. So technically, the Super 7 Ultimates one is the one that I have that is kind of my go-to He-Man action figure that I consider my favorite. The original one is great. Obviously, the original one, the one that started it all, he's a great figure. That's why I have him up here in my place of honor, so you can see him in every single video that I do. uh, but this guy's awesome, and I'm really happy to have him. And he's gonna be up there for me as far as like the best He-Man action figures. I think when everything is said and done, and like I said, I think for a lot of people, this will wind up becoming their He-Man. This like their definitive He-Man, their go-to He-Man when they think of the character and what's the best action figure that we've seen of him. Man, it's that new Eternia He-Man because he's just badass. Let's go ahead and put the horned helmet back on him because I want to get one more look at that before we go. And like I said, it's and in mine it's just sitting a little high on the head, and that's a little disappointing. But like I said, I think I can fix it. After I do, I'll show it off to you guys. Obviously, like I've got Skeletor on the way. This one's called Viking He-Man by some people. Even though, like I said, the official name of it doesn't say Viking He-Man on anymore here. It just says New Eternia and then He-Man. So I guess the official name for him is New Eternia He-Man, and Viking He-Man is probably some sort of like in-house nickname or something to differentiate him. But I think Viking He-Man is a good name for him since he's got that cool horned helmet, which obviously harkens back, like I said, to that original prototype sculpt. Even with like the blue gem and the two red gems, that's very much the way that that original resin figurine was painted. And it was a figurine, it was a solid, non-articulated slug of a figurine. Oh, here's the cat. See, there's her tail. She's come to say hi. Say hi to everybody. Hello. There's the cat. Pretending like she doesn't care about the camera, but she still wants to be a star. So yeah, when I do my review of Skeletor, I figure by then I will have had this fixed. So if you want to see it fixed, make sure that you watch that Skeletor review. And the best way, of course, to make sure you don't miss any of my action figure reviews or any of my custom figures I'm doing is to do all that fun YouTube stuff down below. Like and subscribe. Hit the little bell if you want the constant notifications anytime I put up a video. If you want to be annoyed by by pop-up notifications and the cat's head butting the computer again, which is why it looks like there's a little bit of an earthquake. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about this new Eternia He-Man figure and what you think of the new Eternia concept in general. I'm pretty excited about it, having read about it on the back. I'd like to see more characters in this style. Maybe we could see like the Man-at-Arms with the more sort of conquistador look, or like the blonde Tila of the mini comics, or maybe even the original version of the Sorceress, where like with the Green Goddess, where she was supposed to be more sort of like a sort of anti-hero kind of character rather than just like a straight up heroic or villainous character. Ow! Cat clawed at my knee. I'm sorry. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this time. She's being a little needy, so I guess I better go. But we'll talk to you next time. Bye.